Something made the corpses suddenly jump, and then they kept backing away. Black airstreams appeared in the room. Gradually those black airstreams condensed. It turned out that it was So Jiang Vong who came. He suddenly opened his eyes. One of his eyes was blue and one was red. At this time, seeing So Jiang Vong coming, Tan Quang Vong quickly walked towards that side. Jiu Bin was surprised at the snail's actions, so he asked, Qin Quang Vong, where are you going? The two King of Hell were talking in a language that no one understood. Tan Quang Vong said, Chi Chi Chi. After listening, Vong Sijiang also rubbed his chin in thought and replied, Chi 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 Chi. Jiu Bin awkwardly scratched his head and said, Hey, aren't we fighting? Suddenly we're talking again. Suddenly, the two men turned their heads to look at him. Jiu Bin asked in bewilderment what was going on. Suddenly So Jiang Vong bowed to him. Jiu Bin saw and thought to himself, a little curious about what Tan Quang Vong said. At this time, the system rang a notification. Because Qin Quang Vong pulled So Jiang Vong to surrender. The reward received was to open the underworld, with 5 million underworld money. The two kings of hell shouted happily and said, Chi Chi Chi. Then the two men disappeared together. Jiu Bin was surprised by this scene. He sighed and wondered, where is that cleaning staff? Jiu Bin walked for a while then shouted, he found it. His eyes turned white. He held up an amulet and smiled, wanting to throw it all away. How could it be so easy? The amulet was stuck on the other guy's face. He turned into a controlled corpse. Jiu Bin happily ordered, go away. Find the person's owner. In the garden of the villa in Benhai, two people were sitting in front of a large basin of water, surrounded by 4 burning candles. In the water surface appeared the image of Jiu Bin. Suddenly the water broke. The other two couldn't dodge in time. The man with his hair in a bun shouted, how could this be possible? How could anyone destroy the hell of nothingness? He said shyly, young master, So Jiang Vong, he has surrendered. Gun Koi Lak shouted angrily, I've seen it, I'm not blind, the puddle is all over. The man with his hair in a bun looked at Gun Koi Lak and said, were you sure when you cast the spell, in case that guy came to your house? He spoke up angrily, I wasn't careful, and I lost a few disciples. Gun Koi Lak smirked and said, do you think I'm as stupid as you? He said sinisterly, when the hell of nothingness was destroyed, I had already cut off control from the puppet, now he is just an ordinary corpse. That man thought to himself, not only is he young, highly virtuous, meticulous in work. Suddenly he looked under the lake and shouted loudly, not good. Gun Koi Lak leaned closer and asked, what's wrong? He trembled and pointed at that place and said, it's not over, Mr. Gun. The image of Jiu Bin appeared on the lake surface. He worriedly spoke up, that kid was about to chase us here, but he thought of using a turnaround charm to find us. Gun Koi Lak frowned and said, damn brat, it seems I was negligent. At this time, in a certain villa area in Binhai, there were 2 figures walking below. The body had been taped. He was under a concussion spell so he could only shake his head. He went into a house but Jiu Bin stopped and did not follow. He quickly took out his phone and took a photo of Gun Koi Lak's house sign. He silently thought to himself, let Kai family help him look up this person. Jiu Bin quickly sent the picture he had just taken and left a message, Kai family, help me find out who this person is. The announcement rang. The other person immediately answered, Gun Koi Lak is a famous magician in Gyeongbak, young and talented, highly virtuous, and has many famous people backing him. Jiu Bin finished reading. I wonder, when did I offend someone like that? The notification rang again and he quickly picked up his phone to look. Kai family added another message, if you have time, Mr. Jiu Tu, please come to my place. Here you can look up some things related to Gun Koi Lak. After reading it, Jiu Bin secretly thought, in the end, what did Kai Jia discover that he had to say in front of him? He put his hands in his pockets and turned to leave Gun Koi Lak's house, thinking, he'll know when he leaves. At Royal Number 1, a call rang out. Tiu Jiu and Jiu Bin approached and called. Bu2 smiled and asked, is there any movement on the Cow family's side? Bu2 smiled and replied, that guy had arrived. I'm sorry, last time you scared him. This time I almost had to confront the Kai family. Bu2 happily pulled him in. The Kai family was waiting inside for the Tu family. I took him in. Bu2 opened the door and smiled and asked, Tu family. You talk to Kai family. I'll go serve tea. Bin immediately responded. The guests disturbed Bu2. True Kai held a cigarette in his hand and spoke calmly. Tu family came here and sat down to talk. Bin quickly asked, what did you find out from the Kai family named Gun Koi Lak? True Kai slowly exhaled a puff of smoke. At this time, True Kai seriously said, Tu family, you also know that I am Mr. Mac's person. Bin replied, I know. True Kai spun around to extinguish the cigar. He slowly asked, as far as I know Mr. Mac likes you very much, and the relationship between you and Tu is very good, right? Bin was a little confused and asked again, what does that guy Gun Koi Lak have to do with Grandpa Mac? True Kai opened the cabinet and said, these are the documents my subordinates found. He put up a stack of documents and said, Gun Koi Lak's villa was bought for him by Mr. Mac. Bin was a little surprised and asked again, who is it? True Kai immediately replied that he was an ordinary servant. For the time being, he couldn't find out who he worked for, but I guarantee that he will definitely be able to find out. He immediately stood up, pushed the documents back and said, then thank you Kai family. True Kai stood up, banged on the table and said loudly, since the Tu family has arrived, it's not too late to sit down for a bit and then leave. Bin waved his hand as he walked and refused. Kai family, you are a member of the Mac family. I don't want you to be inconvenienced because of this. Bu2 just brought in tea and saw this scene and suddenly asked, did Tu family leave so quickly? Bu2 turned his head to look at his leaving figure and asked, Kai family, Tu family, what's wrong? I was talking but he didn't pay attention to me. True Kai also remained silent. He closed his eyes and spoke slowly. Bu2 prepared the car. The sound of the car moving quickly. The car rushed on the dark road. The lush landscape quickly appeared. True Kai and Bu2 entered and respectfully told Mac Tontong the story. He was practicing calligraphy and then got angry and dropped his pen. What did you say? True Kai immediately responded, yes. Later he continued, that person's carelessness left a trace. Tu family came to the house. When Tu family asked me to look up the origin of this person, my subordinates found out. Mo Tontong quickly turned black and angrily knocked over the things on the table. You guys really became more and more rowdy. Even my life-saving benefactor and Dao Dao dared to do it. True Kai quickly spoke up to dissuade Mac Tontong, who was so angry that his eyes were bloodshot. Don't be angry. I only said a little about this matter and hid a lot. Mac Tontong turned around and sighed, then waved his hand and said, good job, go home, I will handle this matter. True Kai quickly obeyed, so I left first. The sound of footsteps moving into the room rang out. Lazan went to call Mr. Mac. She quickly asked, what are you planning to do? Mac Tontong frowned and warned, Lazan had to teach him a lesson. The most important thing was to reassure the Tu family. After 2 days, you personally made a trip to welcome the Tu family to my village. Lazan immediately bowed his head and replied, yes, the next morning outside the gate of Nyat Chung Bin High School. Bin still goes to school as usual every day. Suddenly a blue luxury car flashed past him. Everyone in the school suddenly exclaimed, Ferrari. Lazan sat in the car, took off his sunglasses and said, Tu, I'm here to pick you up. After Bin got on, the car quickly sped away, leaving behind a group of students who were extremely surprised. Our school has a warm guy. This is a limited edition sports car. Which class is it? I think I'm falling in love with him. The car quickly arrived at Trung Lak village. Mac Tontong happily welcomed him and then instructed Lazan to quickly go get the tea I had been storing for many years. Once you've brewed it, bring it up here. Lazan chuckled and whispered to him. Mr. Mac is indeed partial to the Tu family. He couldn't bear it no matter how many times he asked for this tea. Bin smiled and nodded and said, Bin thanked Mr. Mac for his good intentions. Mak Tontong sincerely rubbed his hands and said, I invited you today because I want to apologize to you. Diu Bin was a little surprised and asked, Sorry Mr. Mak, why do you want to apologize to me? Mak Tontong said thoughtfully, Dao Dao's body was not good before, someone introduced her. I invited Gun Koi Lak to come to my house to perform the spell because it was effective. I was so happy that I gave him the villa as a thank you gift. The image of scene of pleasure performing magic quickly appeared. Mak Tontong slowly put his arm around his shoulder, but yesterday I heard that Gun Koi Lak wanted to harm you. I was afraid you would misunderstand, so I wanted to invite you to explain this matter. Diu Bin thought to himself, so he breathed a sigh of relief. Mak Tontong happily spoke up. Having said that, I haven't thanked you properly yet. If the little Diu family doesn't mind, then accept the Trung Lak Mountain Manor. After hearing this, Diu Bin gasped in surprise. Diu Bin quickly refused. No Mr. Mak, this is too precious, how can I receive it? Mak Tontong was a little angry, grabbed his hand and said, Tiu Diu family said that to criticize this mountain site, right? Diu Bin quickly explained, how could this be possible? Mak Tontong smiled gently and said, if you don't mind, then let's decide. I'll leave a few people behind so your mother won't have anyone to take care of her, and I'll feel more secure. Diu Bin sighed and accepted. Okay, if Mr. Mak has decided then I will accept it. Mak Tontong smiled happily and said, okay, I will ask Ms. Tu to prepare the name transfer procedure, at that time you just need to sign. He helplessly said, okay. Diu Bin quickly returned to the hospital. Lazan sat in the car and said, Little Diu family, if I don't come up anymore, I'll send my regards to Auntie. Diu Bin politely said, it's okay. Ms. Tu walked away leisurely. Quickly walked back up the very familiar hospital hallway. Diu Bin opened the door and said, your mother is home. As soon as the door opened, Diu Bin stood there stunned. A beautiful girl is changing clothes in there. Diu Bin blushed and said, huh? He immediately closed the door, apologizing that I had come in by mistake. Diu Bin leaned against the door panting, looking like he was about to die, but his body was really beautiful. Diu Bin walked over and looked at the name tag and scratched his head in bewilderment, but it was clearly written as his mother's hospital room, so strange. At that moment, the door opened. The girl from before walked out and asked, who are you and why did you come in here? Diu Bin shyly replied, this is my mother's hospital room. I didn't expect her to be inside changing clothes. The girl happily shouted, oh I know, you are Diu Bin. Lu Hufei quickly took out his name tag and explained to him, I don't blame you for this, I was late for work today. I was afraid that the head nurse would find out so I borrowed Auntie's hospital room to change clothes. This is my name tag when Hufei was sent here to take care of Auntie. Diu Bin looked at the name tag but still shyly replied, oh, I'll bother you later. He immediately looked into the room and asked, where is my mother? Lu Hufei quickly replied, Auntie was too cryptic, so I let her go to the flower garden for a walk. Diu Bin turned around and left. Oh thank you, then I'll go find my mother. She quickly nodded, boom, and suddenly a warning sounded. System screen display, warning system, pay attention to ghosts and demons passing by. Lo Hufei was now standing behind with a strange smile. At this time, Diu Bin was taking the elevator downstairs. He opened the system to investigate. Lo Hufei was a demon, he didn't expect it. At this moment, Lo Hu is on the phone, I've seen you. Lu Hufei bent his waist and stood there saying, yes, don't worry, he's just a kid. She continued speaking, of course using the method I'm best at. At this time it was evening, Diu Bin was in the bedroom taking care of his mother. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. He quickly went to open the door and asked, who is it so late? Outside, Lu Hufei was wearing a sexy dress and said, can you help me? My dress zipper is stuck and can't be pulled up. When Diu Bin saw it, he immediately blushed and swallowed his saliva. She immediately pointed to the bathroom and said, let's go to the bathroom and do it. Don't make any noise to Auntie. Diu Bin said embarrassedly, oh okay. The two of them quickly went to the bathroom. Lu Hufei reminded him, be careful not to damage the zipper. I only brought this set of clothes. Diu Bin blushed and replied, oh. As soon as she pulled it up, she shook her body and shouted, don't scratch me. He finally finished pulling. Diu Bin breathed in the scent of Lu Hufai's body, and after pulling, she smelled so good. Lu Hufai suddenly came closer and said seductively, so why don't you come a little closer and smell it? Being attacked so suddenly, he only had time to make a sound, huh? She came closer and breathed into his mouth. She touched her lips trying to seduce him. Suddenly there was a rumbling noise that made her crazy. Diu Bin also quickly recovered his mind. He quickly opened the door and ran out. I went to see who was coming. He left, leaving Lo Hufai standing there alone, so angry that he was shaking. The surname Ma saw Diu Bin and immediately said cheerfully, good evening master, I came to visit Auntie Hihi. He immediately ordered the group of people behind carrying things, which were here to quickly move the things in. The group of people responded in unison, yes Ma Thu. But they were stopped by Diu Bin at the door. My mother is already sleeping, do you want to make noise for her? The man named Ma quickly got angry and shouted at the people behind him. If you hear clearly, don't you go away quickly, and don't think twice about so many people making noise to the patient. The group of people scratched their heads shyly and replied, yes, young Master Ma was right. Diu Bin stood there and thought to himself, aren't these people brought by young Master Ma? Lu Hufai adjusted her clothes and angrily walked out of the bathroom. At this time, both Diu Bin and Ma saw her anger. Lu Hufai silently reapplied the powder. The surname Ma whispered and asked, what's wrong, Master, have you done it to her? Diu Bin sighed and replied, he wanted to do it but was interrupted by him. The horse family member touched his shoulder, eyes shining and asked, what is her master's name? I think I have seen her somewhere before. The surname Ma is still thinking, where have I seen him before? Diu Bin was speechless and pushed him away. Your way of starting a conversation is too old. I want to sleep, you should go quickly. He was still standing there thinking, I'm sure I've seen her somewhere before. It seemed like a gathering with friends. I remember there was a man with her. Diu Bin did not care to close the door, but when he heard that, it suddenly became human and male. Diu Bin turned around and asked, do you remember who that person was? The surname Ma still rubbed his chin and thought, I'll think about it, let me think about it. Suddenly he spoke up, I remembered, apparently Gun was 23 years old, very young. Diu Bin quickly asked again, is it called Gun Koi Lak? The surname Ma happily replied, yes, it was Gun Koi Lak. He continued to talk, at that time I told my friend, what was his mother thinking? Giving such a stupid name. I literally laughed to death. But the two of them did not know that Lu Hufai was paying attention to them. The surname Ma continued to speak, but before he could say anything, Lu Hufai stopped him, and then I said, Lu Hufai smiled and said, Diu Bin, can you go out with me for a while? He quickly replied, oh, before leaving he didn't forget to tell me, Master Ma, please take care of my mother. The surname Ma quickly replied, Master rest assured and leave it to me. He looked at the two of them leaving and waved goodbye. Master and mother should go slowly and have fun. Diu Bin also waved back at him, and they went to the flower garden behind the hospital. Lu Hufai spoke up and asked, Diu Bin, do you know why I asked you to come out here? She quickly approached Diu Bin, guess what? Diu Bin shook his head but his eyes still didn't forget to look somewhere. Me. I don't know. She squeezed some part of him. Lu Hufai took the opportunity to wrap her arms around him. Diu Bin hesitantly spoke up, Miss, what are you doing? Lu Hufai looked at him and asked, why don't you like me? She came close to his ear and whispered, you don't need to say it, I know it too. Lu Hufai put his hand inside his shirt and said, you definitely like me. She continued to touch his shirt. In the dark sky there were a few stars as piercing points. At this time, Gun Koi Lak cunningly spoke up. Master Lu is still more useful than his method. This kid has no defense against ghosts. This time he can definitely defend. Master Lu smiled happily at the side, dying in the hands of a beautiful woman. This brat seemed to have won a bargain. Lo Hu-Fai still put his hand into the infatuation and said, Suddenly her claws became long. Gun Koi Lak looked excitedly. Lo Hu-Fai wanted to make a move. Suddenly there was a loud noise from the flower garden. Gun Koi Lak said with interest, "Diu Bin, this damn kid." Seeing Lo Hu-Fai stretch out his hands with sharp claws, Gun Koi Lak said, "This time you are absolutely dead." Lu Hu smiled cunningly and wanted to stab his claws into Diu Bin's neck. Suddenly her hand was grabbed tightly. Diu Bin asked, "Hu-Fai, what are you doing?" Lo Hu-Fai faltered and replied, "No, I'm not doing anything." But in her heart she thought, damn, why can't she retract her nails? Diu Bin suddenly pushed her away. A demon, the knack of seducing men with sex, mesmerizing the mind, am I right, Hu-Fai? She was so angry that she was suddenly attacked, so she knew all along that she was pretending all along. He heard that and immediately said, "Aren't you always pretending? We are the same." Diu Bin looked at her and continued, "If you colluded with someone else to harm me, then don't blame me." But Lu Hu-Fai responded with extremely disdain, "I rely on you." She took the momentum to attack. Diu Bin quickly defended himself in the golden light porridge. Lu Hu-Fai said angrily, "Do you think that hunching your head and shrinking your neck in golden porridge can defeat me?" She raised her black-veined arm to attack. Lu Xiaofei laughed evilly and said, "Ha ha ha, to see where you were hiding." The sound of an explosion quickly rang out. Something surprised Lo Hu-Fai. A pop made her quickly retreat. At this time, Diu Bin coldly said, "The demon fairy woman will only give her one way." In the blink of an eye, he moved from in front of her to behind Lu Hu-Fai without her noticing. Diu Bin suddenly grabbed Lu Hu-Fai's hair, making her unable to react in time. The top of her head emitted mysterious hissing sounds followed by screams. A stream of purple energy was drawn out by Diu Bin, causing Lu Hu-Fai to scream miserably. Having dinner on the roof of a building, two people cried out in panic, "Oh shit!" They shouted in surprise. Even someone like Lu Xiaofei who had never lost had failed. He could only use one way to extract the demon's ghost source. He was a monster. While Master Lu was looking east and west, Gun Koi Lak was thinking, not expecting this kid to be so strong. Suddenly Master Lu said, "Oh, where is that kid?" Gun Koi Lak noticed. He panicked and shouted, "What? Where could he go?" While they were looking around, they suddenly shot. Then with a bang, Master Lu quickly hugged Gun Koi Lak to avoid it. He said, "Mr. Gun, it's dangerous." The thing that had just rushed down was Lo Hu-Fai, who was sent flying. Both of them called out in surprise, "Lo Hu-Fai." Looking at Lo Hu-Fai lying motionless on the ruined stone floor, Gun Koi Lak trembled and pointed. "He knows we are here, Master Lu." "We." At this moment Gun Koi Lak discovered that Master Lu had disappeared. His entire face was instantly confused. Suddenly a voice rang out from behind him, "That's right. I know you're here." Gun Koi Lak quickly stepped back and said, "Diu Bin is you." At this moment Diu Bin came out. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and said, "That's right, this is your grandfather." Gun Koi Lak quickly threw the black liquid at Diu Bin. He said, "That kid, go die." Look, the black liquid that he threw rushed towards me, forming a huge fist. He just gently tilted his head to avoid it, then the thing lost its direction and fell to the ground with a bang. The other thing rushed towards him again. At this moment Diu Bin turned around. He grabbed it but it scattered. Seeing this, Diu Bin thought to himself, "This black water seems to have life, it's really difficult to deal with." Suddenly, another branch of it rushed behind him. Luckily, he caught it when it was close behind. He said, "I caught you." When I caught it, it struggled and water flowed down. Seeing that he also wanted to escape, he said, "What, do you still want to run?" Then he took out a talisman and said, "Based on this little high cat skill, he also wants to kill me." Diu Bin raised the amulet to make it glow and then sucked in the black liquid. The talisman slowly sucked back the black liquid. Diu Bin shook the talisman and asked, "This is your killer move?" "That's all," that Gunlock Lak guy still said stubbornly. "Don't bother, kid. I haven't used my killing blow yet." Hearing his excuse, Diu Bin excitedly said, "That's good. Give you a chance. Before you die, use all the means you can." Hearing my provocation, he said, "Damn brat, don't regret it. This move of mine will take your life, watch it." Then, from his hand, a stream of mist spread everywhere. Diu Bin was surrounded by that mist, causing him to cough a few times. Suddenly Diu Bin looked around and couldn't see him, making him cough and scold, "Oh shit, what a shame." Using such low-class tricks, he walked over to the railing to look and saw that he had already run away from here. He silently scolded while running. He was a stupid good guy and couldn't bear the loss in front of him. "Let's just run." Diu Bin showed the burning fire on his finger as he said, "Run, run, let me see who the person who wants my life is." In the evening at the Mac family's private house, that guy had just escaped from Diu Bin and then returned to the Mac family to explain everything and ended with the sentence, "That's exactly what happened." Then the name Gun Koi Lak cautiously called, "Mr. Mac." The person called Mr. Mac Tien Sin was sitting with his hands on his hands and said, "I have warned you many times. Be careful in your work, be careful in your work." Then he shouted loudly, "My grandfather knew about this, and I got involved." The other two guys were startled and chirped, apologizing. Then he turned to the window and said, "No for now. Can touch him again." Hearing him say that, the other two quickly poured fuel into the fire with the intention of taking revenge on Diu Bin. "Are you planning on letting him go like that? That guy is too strong. If you don't eliminate him, it will be even more difficult to deal with him in the future." Mac Tien Sin turned his head and lifted his glasses and said, "Don't worry, I won't be able to take action, but I will find a way to subdue him." Then he walked over and patted Master Lu on the shoulder and continued, "I heard that Diu Bin and his subordinate Lu Kuang had a conflict. Now you know what to do, right?" Those two guys seemed to be enlightened, but looked at each other and laughed. At night outside the Tun Hoang Club, Tiu Ma's face was filled with excitement. He rubbed his hands and looked left and right. Suddenly a blue-haired guy was passing by holding a girl and saw him standing here, so he asked, "Isn't it Ma Thu? Why is he standing here and not coming in?" Tiu Ma just smiled and answered lightly, "I'm waiting for you, waiting for you." That guy heard him say that and asked, "Is Ma Thu waiting for his girlfriend?" When the other girls heard what that guy said, they also followed suit and said, "Ma Thu is so concerned, could it be that he has met his true love? I can't wait to see what that girl looks like." Tiu Ma waved his hand and said, "Go away, what kind of girlfriend?" Honestly, he then bragged that this friend of mine is the most humble person I have ever met in my life. Quote. The story about him must be told from Duck Tu Sun Trang. At that time, on a cool, moonlit night, we met. Suddenly Diu Bin hid. Then Tiu Ma immediately rushed forward to hug him and said, "Master, you are finally here." Diu Bin said in panic as he pushed him away, "Quickly let go, let go." Tiu Ma then pulled Diu Bin into the hall. He excitedly said, "Master, come on, I'll take you to the bag room." Diu Bin pushed Tiu Ma away. He said, "I can walk on my own, don't pull me." After the girls saw that the person Tiu Ma was waiting for was Diu Bin, they discussed, "This is Ma Thu's true love. No matter how you look at it, he just looks like a poor guy." Outside the club, there was a guy wondering, "Mr. Dai Hua, this Ma Thu didn't come to serve you. That's too rude. Is that poor guy even more powerful than Mr. Dai Hua?" When that guy Dai Hua heard what that guy said, he made a muffled sound, then hanged a girl around her neck and said, "Let's go." At this time, inside the club room was the bustling laughter of the other girls, and next to Tiu Ma was trying to please Diu Bin. He held up a plate of cakes and fruit and said sincerely, "Let's eat some fruit, master." Contrary to his sincerity, Diu Bin just flatly refused to eat. Suddenly Dai Hua came and he held a box in his hand and gave it to Tiu Ma. He said, "Ma Thu, this is the birthday present I prepared for you." Only then did Tiu Ma discover his presence. He let out a loud noise and said, "Thank you, Mr. Hua." After opening the box, people around him exclaimed in surprise, "Oh my god, it's green water. Devil." While the crowd surrounded Tiu Ma to see the gift, Dai Hua approached Diu Bin and asked, "Are you Ma Thu's friend?" Diu Bin coldly replied, yes. Then he asked again, since we are friends, what gift have you prepared for Ma Thu? That Dai Hua guy intentionally tried to make trouble, so he asked, you didn't forget to bring a gift when you came to celebrate your birthday, right? Quickly bring it out for everyone to see. Diu Bin only replied faintly, I said. I forgot to prepare a gift. I'll make it up next time. Tiu Ma was confused and relieved. No, there's no need to make up for it, master, your coming is my greatest honor, no need for a gift. That annoying Dai Hua pushed Tiu Ma away and continued to check the matter. He said, there's no need for another day, you can make up for it now. Young Ma, please step aside. Then he waved his hand and called, the waiter is here. After the waiter arrived, he pointed at Diu Bin and said, get a bottle of Scream Inc. 1992 wine. Remember to write down the name of this gentleman to pay. The waiter answers, yes. At this time, Tiu Ma walked next to him and said, master, you don't need to pay this money. Let me pay today's money, said Dai Hua in surprise. Why did you pay for it? You came to the birthday party empty-handed. Let him pay for the alcohol. Diu Bin nodded and said, okay, I'll pay for the alcohol. After receiving his confirmation, Dai Hua turned back to the crowd and raised his hand and said, have you heard? Someone already paid for the alcohol. The crowd shouted to order wine. First the pink-haired woman raised her hand to call, give me a bottle of Petrus. Write down. Then the man next to me raised his hand to call, I want as much wine. Write down, enter. Next, the blonde woman nearby said, I want it too. After everyone finished ordering wine, Dai Hua turned to ask the waiter, how much is the total amount of wine? After confirming, the waiter bowed his head and replied, a total of 520,000, sir. Hearing that number, Diu Bin stiffened and blurted out the amount of money, 520,000. He thought, it was too expensive. That Dai Hua guy saw his surprise and glanced at him and asked, what's wrong, are you saying it's expensive? The junior next to him gently pointed at his hand and then mocked Diu Bin, big brother, isn't that too much? Or not? People may not have seen so much money in their entire lives. The pink-haired woman behind also laughed and said, that's right. When the people around heard that junior mocking Diu Bin, they said in a low voice, no, this guy said to invite us to drink. Suddenly Diu Bin stood up and said, Master Ma, it seems that I am not welcome here. I will leave first. When little Ma saw you preparing to leave, he quickly called, Master. The other group of people thought he was going to run away, so they stopped him from leaving. They angrily said, no, you have to pay before you can leave, that's right. Don't even dream of running away. They said they were offering drinks. That's when they wanted to run away. Already. At this time, the waiter brought up the wine and said, no need to argue, today's money including this wine has already been paid for by someone. That Dai Hua guy was surprised and asked, what? Who is paying? Who is it? The waiter reached out to Diu Bin and said, it was Mr. Diu Bin who paid. Dai Hua was once again surprised and asked, what did you say? The waiter repeated the sentence again, I said today's money has been paid by Mr. Diu Bin. At this time, the pink-haired woman weakly asked, how much did we spend? The waiter replied, a total of 280,000. The atmosphere suddenly changed in the blink of an eye. The crowd was surprised. They were talking again. What? Could it be that he is a rich man in disguise? Tiu Ma was as bright as a flower and he hugged Diu Bin and said, Master, you are too polite to help me pay so much money. Diu Bin was also surprised and thought, who paid for me? Suddenly the door was opened forcefully, followed by a woman's cry for help. Save me, Dai Hua. That Dai Hua hugged the woman and asked, Trung Te then, what's wrong? She panicked and said, I went to get wine just now, but unexpectedly my hand slipped and the bottle of wine fell down the stairs, killing everyone. At the same time, a tall, muscular man boldly walked in with his head covered in blood. He was so angry, who has no eyes? He dropped the bottle of wine, get out of here. That Dai Hua guy played little man and pointed at Diu Bin, trying to blame him, because he threw it. Tiu Ma was angry on Diu Bin's behalf. He said eloquently, fuck, it was clearly Trung Te, then who did it? why are you blaming my master? The other man was even more angry and shouted, who is Trung Tae then, get out of here. He blew up the table next to him and repeated the sentence, I'll ask again, who is Trung Tae then? At this moment, Dai Hua was scared and turned around. Trung Tae then hugged himself and shouted, I didn't mean it. When he saw her, he smiled perversely and said, so it's a girl. He laughed and grabbed her face and said, don't cry, sister, as long as you accompany me for one night, this matter is over. Trung Tae then shouted loudly. He touched Trung Tae then again. He said, don't worry, I will love you very much. He tore Trung Tae than's shirt and said, just follow me. She shouted and hugged him back. Trung Tae then was torn by his shirt and pushed to the floor. She hugged her shirt and shouted, let me go, let me go. When he saw Trung Tae then struggling like that, he became even more excited and said, don't be afraid, little sister. Next was her cry for help, save me, save my life. The lewd guy said, don't expect those cowards to save you, obediently listen to me. Look at those kids. They usually always act like themselves. But when something happened, everyone remained silent. Trung Tae then cried and begged him, I was wrong, please forgive me. Suddenly a voice rang out, stop. The guy turned his head to look. Du Bin said, I said for this big brother, she already knew she was wrong, please forgive her. One of the two juniors next to him hooked his arm and pointed at Du Bin and said, Mr. Dao, this guy wants to play the hero and save the beauty. He smiled and told his juniors, then you guys teach him for me. Let him know what is called the cruelty of society. I can't leave now. Upon receiving the order, they slowly pressed closer to Du Bin. Tiu Ma immediately took the box and shouted, you dare to touch my master, I will risk it with you. He took a step forward, then tripped and fell to the ground. The juniors saw that Tiu Ma had fallen off the stage before he could show off, causing the others to laugh and drool. Suddenly, a guy stepped forward and raised his foot in front of Tiu Ma and said, it seems like we need to teach this kid a bit. Suddenly, a few times, when the others didn't understand what was going on, their legs were stuck by straws, making them unable to move. They shouted, ah, my legs. The big brother was about to have fun, but he pulled his pants back and looked over and said, I didn't expect your bravery to be terrible. Then he took out his phone and called someone and said, if you annoy Mr. Kwang, don't dream of getting out of this city alive. Du Bin asked him indifferently, what, do you want to call for help? He asked him again, you're scared. Du Bin sat down on a red bench nearby and said, okay, quickly call a few more people over. It's best to call your boss Lu Kwang to come. When he heard me say that, he gasped and said, damn, that kid shouldn't be too arrogant. Suddenly the door to the bedroom opened, a woman walked in and called out in a soft voice, Mr. Dao, what happened to you? I also heard your voice in the hallway. Tran Tiu Thien grabbed his hand and coaxed him coquettishly. I said, Mr. Dao, I'm just doing a small business, don't ask anyone to come and smash my shop. He looked fascinated at her big soul and said, of course, how could you do such a thing? The lovely Tran Tiu Thien flirted with her eyebrows to chase him away. Another day, I'll invite Mr. Dao and Mr. Kwang to have dinner together. I'm sure it'll be embarrassing. He led the group of juniors and said, today is embarrassing for Tiu Thien, this matter is over, let's go. Tran Tiu Thien looked after him and said, thank you, Mr. Dao, Mr. Dao, go at ease. Du Bin stood aside and looked at Tran Tiu Thien, who was able to chase him away so easily. He didn't ask or exclaim. As expected of Tiu Thien, he already has his lessons in dealing with a group of people like that. At this moment, Tran Tiu Thien suddenly turned her head and asked, it was her who caused the trouble just now. Trung Tae then trembled and said, I'm sorry. Suddenly with a harsh slap, Trung Tae Than's face was hit to the right. After hitting her, Tran Tiu Thien wiped her hand and said, look at her, she's still young. This slap is considered a lesson, it won't be allowed in the future. Causing trouble in my area. Then she asked again, who is Quach Dai Hua? At this time, Tiu Ma had already grabbed his shoulder and he said, boss, Quach Dai Hua is in my hands. Tiu Ma looked at Tran Tiu Thin and slapped Quach Dai Hua and said, "Don't mind her leaving." "Hand, can you see this?" Quach Dai Hua was slapped repeatedly by him and he said ah. Ah. Tran Tiu Thin said, "I don't want to hit him." Tiu Ma, after hitting Quach Dai Hua, whispered and slammed his face. He was confused. Language. Tran Tiu Thin walked over to Du Bin, leaned his hand and said, "I just want you to apologize to Mr. Du. After all, Mr. Du is also a distinguished guest of our emperor." She also added a bonus sentence, "Of course, however, if you don't want to, I will have someone slap you and beat you until you turn into a pig's head." When Quach Dai Hua heard what she said, he was silent, then he knelt down and bowed his head to apologize to Du Bin. "Du Bin, I was wrong." Outside the club, a junior asked, "Mr. Dao, should we just leave like that?" Inside the car, the guy replied, "You understand your ass, that kid has some bravery. What if the guy Kwang sent to beat him couldn't beat him? Won't I lose face? I have to go see Mr. Kwang, let him invite Master Kwang to take action." At the private bank, Lu Kwang was holding a cigarette while talking. He really lost face. He was beaten by a high school student and even ran to me to report him. The guy tried to explain, "Mr. Kwang, that kid is not a normal high school student. Do you remember the case when Brother Can asked Master Quach to settle the account with the name True? The result was that not only was he beaten, but also 4 million was taken. It was that kid who did it." Lu Kwang was talking as he flicked his cigarette ash. "Hearing you say that, it seems like we have to invite Master Kwang to take action." He laughed along and said, "With Master Khan, that kid is definitely dead." He picked up the wine glass and shook it and said, "Let Master Khan go deal with that guy named True. I will go to Tun Hoang to see you." That owner. When he heard Lu Kwang say that, he regretfully said, "What a pity, I thought Tiu Thin would belong to me." At Royal No. 1, True Kai's juniors discussed about the old man, or should he just throw him out directly, he's this old. What if he dies, and the old man will watch looking east and west as if looking for something? The juniors continued to say, "I've already invited the Kai family, wait a moment." At this time, True Kai came over and asked him. He heard his junior say he wanted to meet me. He asked, "You are True Kai?" True Kai confirmed, "That's right." Suddenly he stared at True Kai with wide eyes. Then he stretched out his long claw-like nails and rushed towards him and said, "My name is Kwang Nyat Sun. Today I have come to take your life." His claws quickly scratched towards True Kai, but luckily he dodged in time so he only grazed his neck. Then he stepped back to warn his juniors to quickly get out of the way. At this time, he had already strangled the two of them and lifted them up. He smiled and said, "Get out of the way. Can you guys get out of there?" Then he threw the person away. That person was thrown back and fell on True Kai's body. Bu2 saw his big brother like that and said, "Kai family, go quickly, I'll stop him." Saying that, he used the iron to hit the old man, but it was quickly broken. The old man laughed sarcastically, "They are a loyal dog. It's just a pity, with this strength they can't hurt me." He kicked Bu2 and made him vomit blood. Then he told True Kai, "True Kai, if you blame him, blame the person who provoked him and the person who shouldn't have provoked him." True Kai gritted his teeth and said, "He deserved to die." Suddenly, Bu2 stood up and rushed up to pin him to the ground. True Kai called out, "Bu2." Bu2 used all his strength to press him down, then raised his head and called out, "Kai family, go quickly." At the same time, in Tun Hoang's VIP room, Lu Kwang jokingly said,